Go ahead and jump in now. It's
Okay, because we have a lot to talk about. So I'm going to kick us off and invite all of you to this soulful playlist that we are about to play for you. So essentially, we wanted to celebrate Black Music Month because we are going into a long weekend for Juneteenth. Hopefully everyone knows why we celebrate Juneteenth. And if you don't, I'll give you a quick recap. Essentially, the date that the slaves were informed that we were freed is not the same date as the day we were freed. And so we celebrate the day, we call it Black Independence Day, because this is the day that we actually were informed that we are, a free citizen. And to me, it doesn't really take action until you know. Like it can be in paper all you want, but essentially if no one knows, then no one's putting it into practice. And so this is the day that we celebrate to put that freedom into practice. And really, when we talk about freedom, we're talking about more than just Black freedom. We're talking about freedom for all citizens, and really equality overall. And especially since this is also in tandem with Pride Month, because you will see the intersectionality and the influence of the LGBTQ community in Black music, as well as just around the world as well. Woven in there. So no matter what your ethnic background, nationality, sexual orientation, identification, any of that, you can enjoy this playlist because you're going to know some favorites and you're going to be jamming along with us. If you have questions, you're more than welcome to put them in the chat. But I am joined by the Queen of Soul herself.
no, that's Rita.
Gail, in the house. So she's going to kick us off with the decades. And let me tell you, she's the Queen of Soul. That's all I got to say. You will know why I call her that. So take it away, Gail.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jennifer. This has been an experience. First of all, anybody that knows Jennifer knows her enthusiasm is like through the roof. So this has been really an experience. First of all, I'd like to say this is the soundtrack of Jennifer in my life. If anybody else was doing this story, they would have a different take on it altogether. The fact that I've been here almost a couple of years shy of 7 decades of this phenomenal music. I was born in the 50s, and we start out talking about music in the 60s because I didn't want to take you all the way back, but we have to mention it a little. In the 50s, when I was born, like most people, you grow up at first, those first 9 or 10 years, you listen to your parents' music. So I listened to Ella Fitzgerald and Donna Washington and Billie Holiday and all of that every weekend or whatever. And it was just a different time. Everything had calmed down after that last war, and there was still a lot of unrest, but it still was a very calming period. People dressed a certain way. They reacted to things a certain way. So the music all sort of seemed bland to me at that point. Now, as I got older and went back and looked at it, I could see the nuances, but that's how I grew up in the 50s, is that there was just so much romance and so much people dressed very elegantly. Even if you didn't have money, you had that one suit and those one shiny pair of shoes you were going to go out in on Saturday nights or whatever. So that's the early years. And then we just transitioned over into the 60s. The very first part of the 60s still had that same feel. And you still had musicians, the Black musicians were still looking very elegant and still doing and sounding a little, but it was changing. Life as we know it was changing. So we start out the 60s, and I think, Jen, you might have a couple of questions to just dive on in there.
Well, first of all, when I think of the 60s, my mind automatically goes to Aretha Franklin. Like, how can it not? So my first question to you, kick us off. What is your favorite Aretha Franklin song? Go.
Child, that's like asking me to pick one of my children and say which one is the best at any point. Somewhere between Natural Woman or Ain't No Way or Respect. That speaking of kicking it off to another level, when that song came out, even though she said over and over in her, as she aged, she said, I was really talking about male-female relationship, but we took that as young Black people and owned that song. So
Not even just Black people, like everybody.
Well, at first though, we owned it. I mean, literally the community owned it. So Ethan is going to play a couple of little bars of it, and I think this is one song that is iconic and recognized all over the world at this point. You even see Aretha in the movie with her hands on her hip and an apron singing it. But that is truly the iconic song that I think about when I think about Aretha.
It's hard not to put your hand on your hip and like start snapping your fingers at somebody when you hear that song.
I know it, because like I said, she's talking to her man or whatever. But we started actually coming up with that from our gut about talking to the people about how we were feeling. This was not Dr. King's movement anymore. It was changing gradually into something that was deeper than that. And as usual, it's led by the youth, you know. Before I get into too much of it, like I said, there still was that level of we haven't changed completely. We are still romantic. So when we talk about Black music, from my perspective, I'm going to always talk about the protest because that's what I was raised in. But I still love me some Black men. So when Sam Cooke would sing, whether he was singing the next protest song or just Baby Come Over Here, it still got me. So Sam Cooke was another one that helped us transition over to not quite a kinder, gentler time, but he was on his way there. So Ethan is going to play a couple of bars out of this song that just gave America and the world warning that this new generation, there was going to be some changes coming.
He looks like a heartthrob, so let's hear it.
Oh, baby, he was so handsome.
I was born by the river in a little tent. Oh, and just like the river, I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will.
All right. Oh my gosh, like
Yeah.
change is going to come. So this is a very emotional song. So what made you choose these two songs, you know, to kick off this discussion and to really highlight the 60s?
Because like I said, you know, before 12 years old, when I was 12, we integrated the school, the little small town that I was in. They closed the Black school down. Wasn't that much violence. There were some. And we actually went to the all-white school. So what I remember about that era is I still saw the beautiful look of how Black people, if they were on Ed Sullivan at night or singing or whatever, they had the beautiful evening gowns and the very shiny wigs, because of course they didn't want to show this kind of hair. And the guys even did their hair, it's called a conch. It was a perm, so they could get the shiny look or whatever. But it was that, so that was still happening, but the change started happening. And that's where, to me, that's where I really entered. I knew I was alive during those other times, but I was doing my mama and my grandmother's thing. You know, we did a lot of sit-ins in Dallas at Woolworths, at H.L. Green, so we could sit at the counters of these places or whatever. And it was more NAACP, and it was more very church oriented. It was just, everything was done peacefully, and that's fine. We all had to look very elegant all the time if we were going downtown Dallas or anywhere. But I chose those songs because, like I said, those were the ones that actually, to me, will always be the bridge of still was danceable music. People fell in love and still were singing some songs about love. But we started looking at the protest and everything about the Black movement differently. And so that's what I look at.
I mean, you think about the assassination of JFK, you know, MLK, the voting rights. There was a lot going on in this.
I tell everybody, when I was 10, Kennedy was killed. When I was 15, Dr. King. When I was 16, 17, Robert Kennedy, and just so many assassinations. So while people talk about the 60s, and a lot of times on TV, you'll see the hippies and the love and all of that. In my community, and remember, the war was already starting, and the draft was in fact, and it really got worse in the last years of the 60s and the 70s. So the music started reflecting that, and eventually how we looked started reflecting that. So anyway, you asked that one question, you know, I can go off on a tangent.
Right. Okay. But speaking of how we look, on a lighter note, I can't go to the next slide until I say the iconic Supremes,
Yes,
the style icons. I mean, look at how beautiful they are. And what I love, looking at old pictures of the Supremes, the Marvelettes, you know, Martha and the Vandellas, like they have that doo-wop style, like with the hair and the wigs, which we wear hair and wigs now, you know, and then the sequin. If I could wear a sequin dress every day, I would. Makeup, but like I would put on the sequin dress, and it's just so beautiful. The lines, the fashion was just so elegant, so high class, and very different from how people look at Black people. Let's just be honest. Like they think of us as like this, oh, we're throwing on some clothes and maybe has holes and all of that. And this is exactly the opposite. They are like setting the bar. And so, I mean, I can't say enough about the Supremes. No, I will take you to the shiny hair. I was going to comment on Sam Cooke's do, and I don't know if the gel didn't dry all the way or if that was on purpose.
Oh,
like,
that's
why this so shiny?
That was the look. And like I said, it's called conch. That was a particular kind of relaxer, and it was literally made with lye. If even Malcolm X, you know, there's the iconic part that he actually had that look, but it was the shininess of the hair. Now,
I feel like I can see my reflection.
And lye itself would burn them and all that kind of stuff, but you know, they covered up in makeup. But all the guys from the 50s and the early 60s, that was that look. Even the Temptations, all the iconic people, but it changed. And like I said, you're going to see eventually when they took all that product off their hair and let their hair go off free, it changed, you know. But at that point, yeah, that was as close to I'm trying to think of Frank Sinatra or whatever, that look that was going for the vocalist that Black people could do. And it was painful. Like Beyonce would say, just to get that look, you know. Yeah. He burnt his scalp to get that look.
For real. Okay, my last question about the 60s. Who was your biggest crush? I know there were two icons. One was Marvin Gaye and the other was Smokey Robinson. My mom could not put down a Smokey Robinson album. This is my last question, then we'll move on to the next one. Who's your crush?
I'm gonna have to go with Marvin Gaye because he came back on with me. Smokey stayed in his face. You know, he owned that romantic falsetto. You know, I would swoon and everything, but Marvin came on and brought it. He brought it on to the protest, to my grittiness or whatever. So I'm gonna have to say Marvin, but if you put on Tears of a Clown or any of those Smokey Robinson songs from back in the day, you still can get me. I mean,
so cute. Yeah. He's always smiling. I love Smokey. But yeah, okay. So Marvin Gaye. I mean, undeniably, he is spectacular. And didn't he was involved in a lot of advocacy and civil rights during this time as well. So can you talk about that?
Yeah, when we move into the 70s, because right now Motown still had him doing. You know, they really churned out some hits, and they were all romantic. You know. The Supremes, everybody that was under that Motown set just turned out romantic.
And then he got angry and we went to the 70s.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, let's move on to the 70s because that's the Marvin that, you know, I really idolized to a certain extent. There was just so much going on. And I think I'd rather go ahead and even look at that the music from that time, what he came up with. After he sort of liberated himself from that romantic part of Motown.
DJ E is going to play the Marvin Gaye song.
Hey, what's up now? This is a big party, man.
Yeah, brother,
I can dig it.
stop it. Right on.
Mother, mother, there's too many of you crying. Brother, 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 there's far too many of you dying. You know we've got to find a way to bring some loving here today. Yeah. Father, Father, we don't need to escalate. You see, war is not the answer.
So we fight wars anyway.
Oh,
Okay.
go through this whole album. This album is really a storybook. It's not, you know, you plan it from front to back. We're talking about war. We're talking about racial unrest. We're talking about ecology. We're talking about everything that was going on, that still is going on. That's what makes me a little sad, even though there's been some progress. But the fact that this album is still so iconic is that you can find any cause that is dear to your heart at this point. Marvin sit down in a studio and sung it from his very soul. There had been the riots in '67. There had been so much going on, like I said, all the assassinations, but the fact that Vietnam actually was a black war. I mean, black people fighting black people. I'm from a very small town, population 80,000, and I lost at least 20 to 30. We lost 20 to 30 black men during that time. When I say men, they were 19, 20-year-old. They were young boys. So we had lots of funerals during that time. And so what he did was put voice to literally what's going on, what's happening. If you think things were bad last year when you would start seeing and all the things with George Floyd and all that, take it back 50 years, and it was like the whole world was on fire, and we were the ones that were sort of burning, you know. So that will always be one of the most iconic albums that I can possibly think of. And then we got even more angrier, you know. So if you notice, Marvin's hair is not in a conch anymore. So the first thing you do is cut it all down and you go bald, and then you let your hair grow out. And he said, as there's a saying in the South, the bigger the hair, the higher you are to God. Well, we took it in the bigger the fro, the higher you are to being just that angry to the other guy.
I like that.
The other guy, yeah.
So that's what I'll say the next time my hair is out here. I'm close to God, guys, okay? So leave me alone.
There was some
Vietnam, just really quick, like my dad fought in Vietnam as well, and he was had to fly over there when he was 17 years old. He's told me the story multiple times. Marvin Gaye is his just right arm. Like, he loves Marvin Gaye. And he was just saying, yeah, like all the black people over there. It was crazy how he had to go to Vietnam because he wanted to go to college, and he was able to get the GI Bill, qualified for the GI Bill, so he could go to college because he grew up in California in Bakersville, and his parents couldn't afford to send him to college, and so this was his ticket to college. And so there were a lot of young kids that were just, I don't know, but I just need some money. But then they're losing their life for a war they don't really know much about, and it's not affecting them. Because look, back home, it's still crazy. So who wouldn't be angry under those circumstances, honestly?
Yeah. But what happened about black music over there, though, and that's what we heard just continuously, that the music, even the Viet Cong, I mean, the music would blur out in the middle of the night. They listened to soul music. And a lot of people actually came back saying that that's what kept them as sane as they were. They came back sort of messed up with the drugs and everything else, because this was a different kind of war. This was like street fighting, guerrilla fighting, in the jungle kind of fighting. There was no uniform, you walk towards somebody and blow them away or whatever. It was really crazy. But we start talking about, now that was what was going on across the waters, but here in America, there was these protests and all the things that were going on. Gil Scott-Heron was the last poet, is what we call him, and really the first rapper, the last poet and the first rapper who started talking over jazz about, this is a revolution. You're not recognizing what's happening. This revolution won't be televised. He's gone now, but true enough, what really brought about everything last year was it was televised. So he was a little wrong. It wasn't televised in the 70s, but it's televised now. The other thing that Marvin Gaye, he did another album in the 70s that was just as important. Like I said, This was a worldwide one, what's going on. But when he did the song, uh, I forgot my song now. Oh, makes me want to holler, throw up both my hands. I think I did cue that one up too, Ethan. Just talking about just what it felt like to be part of this system with ghetto, with not having enough anything, not having support, not finding jobs when they got back from Vietnam. So that song is iconic to me also. So for the 70s, I used two Marvin Gaye songs. DJE?
DJE.
Actually, one thing that wasn't added on to.
Okay. Well, no, honestly, I was going to add something really quick too. When you, because we have Marvin Gaye down, but when you said Fro, my mind automatically went to the Jackson 5s. Okay. So you see this cartoon, everyone, like the Jackson 5 was so cute. Little Michael, he's so small and he was jamming. Oh my God. Like he was so talented, such a powerhouse. And he had his little fro. All of them had the fros. They had a whole portfolio. Like they had the cartoons, you know, and they were just so approachable and so talented. And I know that there are other recreations of it. We're not going to mention it. Donny Osmond and all them like might have gotten a little influence from the Jackson 5s and like putting the cartoon and everything together. But I mean, honestly, there is not a performer that compares to Michael Jackson. Like not Donny, not Madonna, not Beyonce, like nobody compares.
Even baby Michael Jackson. Yeah, even baby Michael Jackson
is the best entertainer on the planet. You know, rest in peace, Michael. He started off strong and ended strong. I know it personal, you got to separate the person from the artist sometimes. So we'll add that. But I mean, Michael, he was so powerful, so talented. For his age.
Well, thank you for lightening that conversation. I was going deeper and deeper into that whole thing.
No. Because I was like, I mean, I appreciate Marvin Gaye. Like he is, I mean, he's a heartthrob, and he was just so real. And he spoke the truth. Like that's what was going on. That's the 70s was Vietnam. So like you went on to it. Now, like I do want to throw in a little Soul Train too, because I sometimes just to jazz myself up during the day, I'm like, I'm gonna just throw on a little Soul Train, because when you hear that Soul Train, like my dad was like, oh, we're getting ready on Saturday night. You get like, so he had a whole thing. I could play it too, but like that Soul Train, and the girls were like, oh, like getting it like down the line. I mean, who didn't love Soul Train? Who didn't get up?
Don Cornelius, he did a great job. But you know, music outside of the protest music, like I said, it's always romance and there's always dancing. And then somebody introduced funk. I mean, this really got weird. It looked weird. The music was still hot. But we also had the style of how people, you know, sort of presented themselves on the stage changed too.
Yeah, no, well, a few things come to mind. So Studio 54, like I watched a documentary the other day, the Studio 54, by the way, if you haven't watched on Netflix, go back and watch it. You can watch the movie too, but watch the documentary first, and then you can watch the Brian Felipe movie. But Studio 54, like, oh my gosh, I wish I could have gone, and I would have gotten in. First of all, I know that. But second of all, like the Club Kids, you know, Divine, like, just Diana Ross, Liza Minnelli, everybody was all up. The Jacksons, Michael was all up in Studio 54. I mean, the style, the iconography. And I don't know if this person was in Studio 54 or not, but he stood out as far as style, in my opinion. Rick James.
I think I got a picture of him on here on an album cover.
I'm sure he was at Studio 54 if he could get in. He might have been a little too young, because I know he was like 70s and 80s. But like leather pants. Look at this man, this big man that came from the hood in these tight leather pants, a V-neck, you know, shirt with his hair flowing, but beautiful voice. But I'm like, okay, well, 70s was interesting. I mean, I'm not judging, because I would have been in Studio 54, please believe, and I would have stood out.
The Club Kids, you know, everything that you're talking about, you know, but Rick James, Patti LaBelle, Prince, that's what's coming out of the end of that 70s is all of these iconic people. So let's move to the next slide because I think I do have some images of some of their iconic album covers. No, see, we put them in the 80s. That's just that falsettos that we were going to talk about, you know. But in the 80s, we changed over to more of a global. It wasn't just internal. Now, the protest was not just internal. At that point, Bob Marley, who had been an icon there in Jamaica and in some of the British and the Virgin Islands, actually brought his thing on the road to both America and Africa. And some of the things that we were talking about then was apartheid and HIV/AIDS, and you know some of the music that came out of that. Fela Kuti actually was a global pioneer to talk about what was going on the African continent, and some of the things that were happening in South Africa at that time affected Blacks in America also. So that's my little protest music for the 80s. But there was other things that were going on. Like I said, there was so many.
It up the protest music. I want to hear a little Bob Marley. Like, let's change it over to the little reggae.
Yeah.
Reggae with a thoughtful message. DJ E. There we go. Now we're getting to party mode.
Get up, stand up. Stand up for your right. Get up, stand up. Stand up for your right. Get up, stand up. Stand up for your right. Get up, stand up. Don't give up the fight. Oh, preacher man, don't tell me heaven is under the earth. I know you don't know.
Come to this meeting. Like next time, we'll have to pass them out.
He used to say all of his album covers were made to roll weed. I mean, literally, it was written sometimes inside the cover. This is perfect.
Be honest. Okay, I appreciate that.
But he believed that, and that's what he believed. But he also believed in this whole equality thing, and he saw how, you know, one of my favorite songs by him is "No Woman, No Cry," and it's literally what we've been seeing all last year is that mothers seeing their son be shot down in the streets. So there's just so much to that. But the whole apartheid movement made the civil rights movement, it took it and put it on steroids. So that was, like I said, I don't know, I'm a product of protest and romance. So I also love this guy. I thought he was one of the most handsome guys, and I loved his dreads, which is my, you know, tribute to him by wearing locks to this day.
No, that's cute. Okay, so different style, like what I think of the 80s. So I was born in the 80s, and so I got a little bit. But like you mentioned Prince earlier. So I automatically equate him to the 80s because of Purple Rain. And, here we go. Oh, okay. We have both of them, Rick James and Prince.
I told you I had him. I didn't know where I put him, but I knew I had him.
Yes.
Yeah,
look at those boots. Oh my God, those red boots. Like I have some boots like that, but they're not red. So I got to get some. I have those leather pants. I mean, the bangs, everything are great. Then you look at Prince, who I would marry. I don't care. I know I would be one of many, but whatever. If my hair curled like that, I would be on the album. Just that. So Prince, okay. I'll just call it like the androgynous style that was starting in the 70s, it sounded like, and then it made its way to the 80s. You know, they make jokes about how the guys that looked, you know, the most like a girl had like the most feminine style were the ones getting all the ladies, you know, and so because I mean, I understand why that is personally, but like, can you explain, you know, what that androgyny, how that influenced, you know, Black music and whether these artists did or the times, where did this kind of style come from?
I really love the fact that we were able to go from one topic to the next with just talking about music. But the androgynous style, first of all, that also was a period of HIV, AIDS. There was so much going on in the community, and we watched these people actually being decimated and nobody standing up, not the churches, not anybody else. And in the Black churches, especially where I grew up in, we knew that in our choir stands, our choir directors, our musicians, a lot of them were gay and they were suffering, and we were watching them die. We were going to funerals just like we did during the war. I mean, literally, we were going to funerals and everything. So then we looked at Rick James and Prince, and to me, that's as close as we got as a community, as musicians, actually saying, this is what I look like, this is what I'm, and this is how I sound, and you take it or you leave it, you know? So even though nobody talked about it in big circles, but we know that the gay community made so many of these stars. I mean, whether that's Patti LaBelle and LaBelle, whether that's, I mean, they loved and supported before anybody else, you know. And I just remember so many times going to gay bars and dancing all night long, and the music would be so hot. So I'm going from one of the serious things that was happening with the community, and just how those of us who decided we're going to embrace this, we embraced it. Now, androgyny has nothing to do with anything other than this is how he chose to look. He's a little Prince, little bitty guy. Heels made him feel good. He had a great body for a male or female, and he looked good in his things.
In those heels, I got to see him perform. He played every single instrument on the stage. His diamond platforms were this tall. Yeah. And he walked around in them beautifully and played every single instrument on the stage, as well as sang. I was blown away. Like, he is.
Yeah. And Rick James.
Talented.
He was Rick James.
Right.
You know, it's like, you know, say something to me.
Say something.
Everybody loved the music. Everybody loved the music. And I don't care how they would, you know, sort of act like they didn't want to dance to it or make little fun, do it a whole little, you know, whatever. Yeah. They loved it. And so to me, that was the intersectionality, or as close as music came to making its statement. And like I said, sexuality is what it is. And I love the fact that these musicians, and there were so many more. I mean, I just loved the fact that the 80s brought out, I mean, some of my, you know, Sylvester. I'm just trying to think of people right off the top. Because following the 70s discos, which, I'm sorry?
Oh, I said DJ E. Do we have a Prince song to play too?
We do.
Yeah, no.
Like, that guitar solo in the beginning is unreal. His portfolio is unreal. I know we have a few musicians at the agency too. Maybe we should have a talent show one day. If anyone can go in with the Prince, When Doves Cry guitar solo, please do. I can be your fly girl dancer, because we're about to get to the 90s and I'm a great fly girl. Like, I can put on my In Living Color like outfit, which I'm wearing now, and be that. So please feel free to jump in and play that anytime, because he's so great. But I do know that there was something else going on in the 80s underlyingly, during the Reagan era and whatnot, and that will take us into the 90s, how the 90s started, because we're angry again in the 90s. So can you tell me a little bit about what was going on? Like, why were we so angry at the beginning of the 90s?
Well, I mean, the anger just kept building. I mean, it would subside a little and go underground. And one of the things that I think I mentioned in an email I sent out is when you don't address these things, they just keep, you know, they just go underground and they come back out differently. But end of 80s, early 90s, there was, and it turned out the CIA was doing it, drug flooding the neighborhood, the Black neighborhoods. And I mean, literally, there was all kinds of interactions with, you know, people turning to crack and the whole 9 yards. So then you have the police going in and monitoring even more. And so you've got a bigger, you're sitting on a powder keg at that time. So there were lots of riots and things going on. And as we moved into the 90s, the LA riots and behind Rodney King and all that started happening. So that's the transition. Music transitioned with it also. And so now you have not the last poet and the first rapper. Now you've got Tupac. Now you've got NWA and Bone Thugs and Harmony and Public Enemy. Go back one slide, Ethan. There we go. Yeah, you've got angry young men, and you've got angry white men with guns, you know, in LA, in Boston, in New York, or whatever. So then you have people like, you know, F the police and the whole 9 yards, because there were things happening, not just innocent people, you know, getting shot down. There were some people who were probably needing to go to jail, but maybe not be killed. But it became one of those going against the system kind of thing. And so, obviously, so my fro got big again, you know, during that time, because you have these people, they're not calling you to go and kill the police. It's not what that was going about, but it was actually trying to draw attention. Before we had cameras or anything else, the rappers were our radio, they're telling us what's going on. That's how we found out. You know, they were our newspaper, our journalists. And so
letting you know what was going on. And I mean,
they were creating it, they were telling it.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, I actually ended the Asian Pacific Islanders month with the LA riots for a reason, because Rodney King was shot in Koreatown. So people, like, we know that this affected the Black community, also affected the Asian community very much so, like devastated the community because of all the looting and the shooting, all of that. And so this is a time when we had to come together to really save Los Angeles and save, you know, the community. And we all are so intrinsically linked. When you're a marginalized community, you have a lot in common, you know, and it's not just targeted like racism and sexism, and all that is not just targeted to one. It affects us all. And whether you're in the majority or the minority, you're part of it. You're part of a society because we're all human beings. And the only way that you can combat that is, number one, education and awareness of what's going on, which Gail said, like these songs were that, you know, they were talking about, they were the emotion behind what was going on. But then also just trying to do something about it, not just like listening to it, but like let's all band together. So I know I queued up. So this is when I was growing up. So I queued up Bone Thugs and Harmony, and I'm going to say that why I chose Bone Thugs and Harmony real quick before we play it, because those of you might know that I worked for AT&T at the start of my career in the LDP program, and one of my white male coworkers got so crunk about this song. It was hilarious to me and so great. And he was like, bum, 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 tell me what you're gonna do now. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is where we're linked, because he loves that song. And it was just so pervasive. Like we talk about the global appeal. Who doesn't know that song? So let me play a little clip of it and see if you recognize the beat going into it and have that nostalgic moment like me and my friend did.
Boom, 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 boom. Tell me what you gonna do, but it ain't nowhere to run. When judgment comes for you, when judgment comes for you, what you gonna do, but it ain't nowhere to hide. When judgment comes for you, 'cause it's gonna come for you. And I'm gonna miss everybody out around the like I ain't looked at a while.
I didn't want to play like the angry rap here because there's profanity and whatnot. I don't want to get into that. We can play that after hours, after 5. But right now, I wanted to highlight this one in particular because a lot of people assume that rap is angry and they're just saying a bunch of nonsense, but really there's a story. It's poetry, honestly. And the ability to freestyle is an art form. Like it's like improv. And so Bone Thugs and Harmony was like a Christian rap group, and they were talking about very heartfelt things. And I looked at the lyrics again too, and it broke my heart because he's saying like, I miss my Uncle Charles, y'all. He shouldn't have gone in front of his home. He was shot in front of his home. What did he do that was so wrong? Like, it was so wrong. Got to hold on, got to stay strong. We pray every day so that we can one day go to heaven. But, you know, it was just so hard. I will meet you at the crossroads so we won't be so lonely. Like, I'll meet you at the crossroads so we won't be so lonely. Like, it is a very heartfelt song talking about how all we had was each other. And you see that your own family members are getting killed in front of you. How are you supposed to feel? You can take the angry route, or you can just lament for a second. And I love that other people, other ethnicities bond on this song, because this is a peaceful song. This is just saying, like, there's a higher power, and we just have to have faith that it will get better. So that's all I got to say about that, because I can go on and on about that. But also, my second song, reason why I'm dressed the way I am too, is about like female empowerment, and Rhythm Nation and the dancers and the girls in this era. And so I did my best Janet Jackson Rhythm Nation. But the song I queued up was Lauryn Hill. I mean, Idol, because she really kept it real. She could both sing and rap, and she was talking about what was going on in the community. And then she, in this particular song, she paid tribute to doo-wop in the 60s. So you'll see some of that influence here. Really well done, very poetic. So I brought that here to the table as well. So let's play a little doo-wop.
Back on the bully when cats used to harmonize like, yo, my men and my women, don't forget about the dean. This is not the most the king, yo. It's about a thing, yo. Feel real good with your hands in the air and lick 2 shots in the atmosphere. Since you were looking for your friend, the one you let hit it and never called you again. Remember when he told you he was about to run the
in Sister Act? Like, she loved me there, because I mean, Sister Act, I will still perform Sister Act to this day. You turn it on, and she was so fabulous in that movie. I know that she got off after this album, but it was one of the top albums of all time for a reason. If you haven't listened to The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, please go back and listen to it from start to finish. She changed the game, and we'll say that. Going back to Rhythm Nation really quickly. So at the beginning of the song, Janet had this little interlude, and she said, "We're a nation with no geographic boundaries, bound together through our beliefs. We are like-minded individuals. We share a common vision toward a world with no color lines." And that is the theme. Like, females were coming out, and we don't have to always be in a mini skirt to get attention and to be sexy and to be pretty. We can be in all black, like military style dance. TLC, they were in their baggy clothes, and Left Eye, you know, she had the contraceptive on her left eye. That's why they were calling her Left Eye. Now, why? She wasn't trying to be raunchy. She was trying to promote safe sex, because in the black community, you know, in the hood, you're saying, okay, abstinence is not an option, because unfortunately, that you're introduced to that at a very young age. But what's a little bit more realistic is safety. And so women are coming out and just trying to be very real and be very raw. So Lauryn Hill and Janet, and I can go on and on about just the females that were coming out of the woodworks. And the females have always played a part in every single decade, but I had to give it to them. Like, we can talk about Brandy, we can talk about Tony, we can talk about all of them. So we go to the next slide. I want to call out one in particular. All right, so I talked about Rhythm Nation. Second one, RuPaul. Now, anyone that knows me knows I am obsessed with RuPaul, and I know that he is not the only drag queen, and he has a perspective. We've got to separate the man from the icon. But oh my gosh, RuPaul is an icon for many reasons. Number one, because this song, when it was introduced, I mean, he was in the club kid scene. He came in up through the 80s and tried to figure out his style, and he came from, you know, it's evolved over time. He didn't always look like this, like, pristine, you know, I guess, person. So he came out with Supermodel, and he called out some of the most iconic 90s models, one of them being Naomi Campbell. Okay, like everyone wants to walk like Naomi Campbell. So you're starting to see that assimilation of like pop culture into the music. And RuPaul, like Sashay Shantae, who doesn't? I will Sashay Shantae all around the room right now if I could, but we don't have time. I'll do it after though. If you want to call me, I'll sashay all around the room. But RuPaul is like monumental. He changed the conversation, and I'm telling you, there is an undeniable link between the Black community and the LGBTQ community. And as a fellow artist, as someone that grew up in the creative community, in the performing arts, and it could be musical, whatever it is, then I know and honestly can relate more sometimes, actually a lot of times more to the LGBTQ community than the straight community. And some of my best friends, you know, are part of the community. And so that's why I got a tribute to RuPaul. I can't talk about female empowerment without RuPaul, because like Gail said, they really have supported female empowerment, the Black community in general, and just really on the cusp of culture. And they are linked. So Pride in Black community, this just, it made sense to bring this up. And so I can go on and on about that, but I had to put RuPaul in this conversation. So yeah, I will end it there, and we'll go into the 2000s because I know that we have a few more because we are in the 2000s now. So Gail, I'm sorry, I talked so much. Did you have anything you wanted to say about the 90s that I did not cover?
No, I think you really covered it, and I think we went through it really well. I do like the way we exchange it, you know, in the early on, the 60s, 70s, 80s. I mean, that was my period, and this is your period. So I think I'm glad to see you actually bring out the things that you actually like about it. We would go down different paths, I'm sure, but not with RuPaul and Janet Jackson. We're on the same page with that one, but there are so many other artists that we could have talked about, but I really like where this went. So let's move on to 2000 then. Okay. 2000, and you know, that's not a decade, it's two of them in there. So 2000 and beyond. So
okay, no, we have the Lauryn Hill. Okay, I'm sorry. Before we go to 2000s, Doo Wop. I forget, we have that one queued up so you can see the likenesses between the two things. So I know.
You better watch out. Some girls are only about that thing, that thing, that thing, that thing, that thing, that thing.
Okay, so I know we played the song already. We didn't get to see the visual, so you can go back and look at the PowerPoint, but I mean, so powerful. She's so talented. So, okay, moving on to the 2000s. So a couple things I want to get across in the 2000s. We're living it right now, first off, but there has been a lot already that has happened within like the first couple of decades. So the first one to me is house music, and the invasion of house music. And so this is a little bit 90s too, but like Crystal Waters, Chicago house music, the East Coast house music. I mean, you talk about going to the club and partying. That didn't, I mean, let me go back and like think about my words here, but the house music is very much part of the Black community. And if you just Google Chicago house music, and I lived in Chicago for 7 years, and that's a specific type of house music. Every like region has their type of house music. And you're starting to hear a little bit of it in the 80s, to be honest. And then it comes in the 90s and the 2000s. And then it's here you know, to stay. And it's evolved as well, but it's like that upbeat. We talked about the syndication or whatnot in the 80s. Now this is like house, you know, I think it has evolved into the house music. And so I wanted to call that out first and foremost because it is the baseline of a lot of 2000 songs. So if we go to the slide real quick, DJE. Okay, then that's one part of it. Now this isn't house music, obviously, but the second one is like neo soul. We talked about female empowerment. No, you can go back, DJE. Okay, because we'll go to Kanye in a moment. But the neo soul is.
So
take this one because
yeah, Erykah Badu is yeah, she's iconic in the sense that she brought in some of pieces of all of it, where we're talking about house, we're talking about spirituality, we're talking about real, raunchiness. We're talking about the whole the look of Afrocentric, with the turbans and the Afrocentric clothing. It can get a little crazy, but her voice is a throwback to Billie Holiday. I don't know who all she channeled when she channeled herself, but
She
this
says
music
in some of her songs too.
yeah,
Like she's
this music is
attributed
hot,
to.
and she's going to move forward. But while we were talking about 2000s, and before we go too far, Pharrell, Outkast, you name it. But we sort of landed on Erykah Badu because she sort of represents where the spirituality of music is going. It might have a little gospel in it, but it's sort of syncretic to all religions or whatever is what it's sounding like, So she makes nods to Buddhism. She makes nods to a lot of different ways to actually find your peace or whatever.
Well,
so I
like
that
about the evolution of R&B, because I mean she has a type of R&B, that neo soul, that her and Daniel Caesar and India Arie, like all of them are in that kind of Maxwell. We probably named so many in here, but Erykah, she's from here, first of all, by the way. I literally jog by her house sometimes too, and I'm like, Erykah, like I'm here, and I'll sing it. So I think we have an Erykah Badu song queued up too, one of my favorites, and I'll tell you why she wrote this particular song. But you want to play that one, DJ E?
Bag lady, you gon' hurt your back, dragging on them bags like that. I guess nobody ever told you all you must hold on to is you, is you, is you. One day, all them bags gon' get in your way. One day, all them bags gon' get in your way. I said one day, all them bags gon' get in your way. One day.
All right, so what is she talking about? What's she talking about with the baggage? I mean, we touched on in other decades too. Black relationships, okay? And she's talking about, and it's not just Black. We're saying Black relationships because of the context here, but relationships too. Like, it's the struggle and the fact that you can carry that emotional baggage into your next relationship. So she's saying in this song that pack light, like don't carry the baggage. You've got to let it go, girl. And the only way you're going to be able to let it go is through love. You got to love yourself, number one, before you can love anyone. And so one day it's going to clutter up your space because you have so much baggage. So she is on another level. And another artist to me that's on another level, I know he has his moments, okay, but yes, undeniably when College Dropout came out, like changed the game again. He's really great, similar to Erykah, in that he can mix in the old and the new so seamlessly. And the Chicago house music, he was part of that scene as well. He's part of the rap scene, he's part of the pop scene. And he's a creative genius. He really is. He's also egotistical. Somebody might need to take his microphone away a few times, but really, like, if he just stay in the studio and make music and that's it, then honestly, he's great. So if you can go to the next slide and play the next song, College Dropout. This teddy bear is so iconic. And let's go ahead and put us in the mindset for Kanye West.
Yo, G, they can't stop me from rapping, can they? Can they, hot? I spit it through the wire, man. There's too much stuff on my heart right now, man. I gladly risk it all right now. It's a life or death situation, man. Y'all don't really understand how I feel right now, man. It's your boy Kanye Titter. Shot-town, what's going on? Yeah. I drink a boost for breakfast, an insure for dessert. Somebody order pancakes.
First of all, if you didn't already recognize the song in the background, that is Shaka Khan, my girl. My hair is sometimes Shaka Khan like that day. It's fine, it's beautiful, and it's big, and she is iconic as well in her own right. And he mixed in her song Through the Fire into this one. They also have the Otis Redding song. I mean, he just does it so seamlessly that he's trying to remind people where we came from, you know, and he is the new school version of these songs. And it's a continuing evolution. So Gail, do you have anything else to say about that song before I just kind of do the last like kind of integration story?
No, let's just move on because we actually are at the end of our moment.
Last point that I want to make is the integration, okay? Like literally integration. So there are artists that are not Black anymore that are defined as R&B. Now, Mariah Carey is Black. She's half Black. And when she first came out, she was marketed as white because that's what the studio and label decided to do with her. Then if you listen to her autobiography, she talks a lot about that. But she's like, hey, I'm half Black. I want to do R&B. This is my music. These are my people. I'm inspired by Aretha Franklin, whatnot. And so when she branched out, she was a true R&B artist. She won a Grammy for being the best new R&B artist. So I think that like gave a lot of impetus to other artists that were like, oh, you know, maybe we can do this R&B thing too. Like we want to, we feel that soulful music. We feel the music in our soul. We want to contribute to the R&B sound. And so you have artists like Robin, who is one of my all-time favorites. I go so hard for Robin. I love Robin. And she is identified as an R&B artist. And so R&B is not just defined by Black music anymore. You have the Korean pop band, okay? Like they are R&B and they're smooth, like they're dancing. And it's just the way they talk to me, I laugh because it is in a good way. Like it's so cute and it's so great to just see the evolution of R&B. I don't feel a way about it because it's not appropriation. They're still carrying it out. They're still helping it evolve. So I appreciate it as long as it's done authentically. Like you're still in line with the soulful piece. You're still attributing to where it came from. You're not acting like you made it because you didn't. But I appreciate bringing other people into it. So that's my last note. Gail, take us home. What do you feel about just this whole discussion?
Like I said in the very beginning, this is our stories. You know, I told mine from back in the day, and then you did that. Okay, Boomer, let me take over. So I'll let you take over. I did want to say music, if you once was a music follower, you're going to always be. So I didn't stop at my era. I kept going. So as we move into the 2022s and all that, there are so many just superb musicians, Masego, her, Daniel Caesar, just different people that I still follow. And I think that they've got that spirit in them, that soul that we talk about. That's one of the things that I'd like to say. I really, we could take any one of these decades, any one of the fashions or music or politics, and we could take and do a whole session just on that. So you were a joy to talk about music with for the last week or so, and I've played so much music that I think my husband is sick of me. But I appreciate everybody who came on. Really enjoyed talking with you guys about the soundtrack of our lives.
Been really fun. Thank you for letting us share our playlist with you. And honestly, it is searchable on Spotify. So if you're on Spotify, please go search for literally Soundtrack of Our Lives. Jesus put it together for us. He has the beautiful creative up there. And we have a bunch more songs because
yes, and the playlist is collaborative. If just making sure that it is actually Black music. I think Mike might want to say something to us today. Were you back there jamming, Mike?
Yes.
I was, but you couldn't watch me dance, so I turned the camera off. I don't want to say anything other than thank you guys very much. It was amazing.
We enjoyed it so much.
No judgment on the dancing. So you're feeling it, feel the moment, and get up and dance. So
we definitely want to thank DJ E.
DJ E in the house. Thank you.
Ethan Wilder is our sound tech, everything. He's been everything to us. So thank you so much, guys. Have a great end of the day and enjoy Juneteenth.
Great long weekend.
Yeah.
Yes, have a great long weekend and think about what it's all about.
Exactly.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
All right,
bye-bye.
Take care.